at the committee meeting we were talking about actually what would be a really good next one, and someone suggested that we have Gemma come and talk to us about mindfulness, and I know it's something that I'm really quite fascinated in, and so Gemma has brought her friend Andy along as well, and we're going to video it. So does anyone issue with being videoed, or because then we can share it around the club for those people that weren't able to make it. So
pointing right at us.
I can Photoshop it out.
Okay.
So, me a bit.
So, hope you have a really good evening. Thanks, Gemma.
Okay. So, welcome everyone. I just wanted to introduce myself first. I think I probably have met either online or in real life most people. But just in case you don't know me, I'm Gemma. I've been running with the club for around 2 years.
Can't start, it's not 8 o'clock.
Come on in, join us.
Yeah, the clock's on your leg. Just sit down. Be more mindful of time. Be quiet, that's disruptive.
We literally said hello and that was it. You haven't actually missed it.
Doing that without me being here, I mean, you know.
Yeah, well, we know you're here now, so.
So I was just introducing myself, just saying, I don't know what I'm telling you, you know who I am. I'm Gemma, I've been with the club, running with the club for 2 years after I did the beginner's course. Outside of work, I'm a counselling psychologist and a mindfulness teacher and practitioner. I mainly use mindfulness for the people that I meet in the NHS who are suffering from anxiety or recovering from depression, or more commonly now I work with people who have like a long-term health condition and are living with something that is ongoing. The reason I got into this, just before I started running with the club, I had a period of ill health. And as I recovered, what I found was there are 2 things in life, other than my wife of course, that helped me the most with the recovery. One of them was joining the club and getting into running and that kind of physical experience, especially when you've been ill and you feel like your body is betraying you in every possible way. The other one was developing deeper my understanding of mindfulness, which had been growing over a few years, but as I became a practitioner who actually taught it, obviously it grew. So I became interested in putting these 2 things together, and I found that it is actually a thing, that there is a thing called mindfulness for sports performance enhancement, which is kind of what we're going to talk about today. And it's going to be quite a practical kind of workshop. So mindfulness is something that you can try and understand academically, but you will not get very far, because it's actually something you need to practice and live and experience. So we'll talk about it a little bit, but we'll also have some practices and some fun stuff in the middle. So I just want to introduce Andy. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. So I'm Andy. I met Gemma 8 years ago when we were both trainee psychologists together. I've been involved in some way with mindfulness for 20 years because, without knowing it to start with, I've had a whole series of bereavements over those years, and I found it was the one thing that actually helped with bereavement. And so I kind of met someone who taught me some meditation 20 years ago. I thought this is good, carried on doing it. By the time I met Gemma, I was actually using mindfulness techniques with people with learning disabilities and autism and things like that. I'm a rock climber and a mountaineer predominantly. I do a little bit of running just because it's a good way to get fit. Find it really interesting now recently, since Gemma's launched these initiatives, to experiment with applying mindfulness to sports. And it's interesting for me to have these 2 different sports because you can cross-compare the effectiveness of the technique to both running, climbing, to very, very different things, and therapeutically. And it's fascinating. So that's why I'm here.
So, talking of sports, those who know me well know that I don't actually drink, so this might get interesting. I've never actually done this with a group bigger than 10, and I've never done it with wine. So, we'll kind of just see what happens. So, mindfulness is such a buzzword, you can't really open a newspaper or turn on the TV without somebody at some point talking about mindfulness. Unfortunately, when anything becomes a buzzword, people feel that they know what it is when actually they've just heard the word. So it can be important just to kind of redefine what are we actually talking about here. Does anyone who knows a little bit about it fancy giving a definition of stuff? Any thoughts on what it is?
Being in the moment.
Being in the moment? Awesome. Anyone want to disagree or expand?
Appreciation of what's going on right now.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's pretty much all it is, really. So there is a definition. If I stand up and I can actually see the slides. So this is like there are a couple of different definitions, and depending on which school of thought you go to, will alter slightly, but this is a very accepted one. John Kabat-Zinn, who wrote this definition, was the mindfulness that I know and that I teach, especially for long-term conditions, was developed in the 1970s in America by him, so he's like the big name in it. So as it says, mindfulness is the awareness that emerges when we learn to pay attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally to things as they are. So kind of put another way, the ability to watch your thoughts, your feelings, sensations, as they come and they go without necessarily latching on. And this tends to provide people with freedom from what is usually an automatic reaction to your thoughts or your feelings, or kind of sensation, memory, lots of different things. So it is the opposite of autopilot. Can anyone have a guess what autopilot means?
Don't think about what you're doing. Just
Instinctive reaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's when you drive 80 miles to the motorway, you can remember nothing. It was got there.
Fabulous.
You can remember nothing you're talking about.
Fabulous. All of those things were right, and they were all building to that. That's just brilliant. Yeah, so autopilot is generally our everyday mind state, kind of going through life half asleep. So the classic example is just that. When you drive all the way home or walk all the way home and you don't remember a single thing of the journey, you know, we live in Wickham, you know you've crossed roundabouts and lights and gone up hills and down hills and people have walked out in front of you and cars have hooted you, all this kind of stuff. You know that's happened, but you don't remember a single thing of it or particularly remember what you were thinking about because your mind was just on an autopilot. It was just kind of going on. So some other examples there of maybe not noticing things. So maybe kind of going through life without really noticing things. There's kind of a famous experiment where someone asked lots of different people to draw the Apple symbol from Apple technology, and most people got it the wrong way round, or the bite was in the wrong place, or there wasn't a bite, or there wasn't a leaf, or there was a leaf. You know, we all see it every day, yet we don't really necessarily pay attention to it. Also in small talk or arguing over Brexit, how often do you kind of talk to someone and you're not really hearing what they say because you're planning your next answer, especially if it's a Brexit related kind of argument or something that matters to you. You might be kind of caught up in what you're going to say rather than what they're saying. So I've got a brief clip, which I'm hoping the internet's just going to work. This is just a funny clip that kind of highlights this a little bit.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom. I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
But how did you know?
Madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. Take her away.
That's right, madam.
It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you?
Action.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts and precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
So who noticed? Or didn't notice? Or noticed one or two things? Or no?
Nothing.
Nothing.
I noticed one week there was a rolling pin and then there wasn't.
Yeah.
That was the only thing.
But there was a giant bear, and then there was a suit of armour and stuff. And you know, this was a road safety thing, so it was about paying attention to everything, which isn't quite what we're talking about, but it's a similar thing. You kind of go through life looking for what you want to look for, or in your own little world. We all do it. We're all the centre of our own universes, so we all do that. But that might mean that you miss stuff. And mindfulness is about having the ability to notice what's going on in your own mind as it's happening. So, what's next? We have a game. So, I didn't want this to be just a kind of eye talk at you, because mindfulness is kind of an interactive thing. So, everybody, I'm going to say right at the start, everything I ask you to do, I'm inviting you, not telling you. It's entirely up to you how much or how little you get involved with it. So that's it, everybody get out. So we're just going to play a little game that basically just thinks about the myths and things of mindfulness and what's true and what's not true. So as we said, mindfulness is a buzzword. It's something we all talk about, but sometimes we know what it is and sometimes not so much. So as you'll see on the walls, one side says true, one side says false, and one side says I don't really know. So I'm going to read out a statement, and I just want you, with all your drinks and beers and being very careful, to kind of run/walk over to the side that you think it is. And we might all agree or we might all completely disagree. So the first one, you have to be religious or spiritual to be mindful. Okay, I kind of think everybody's gone to the full side.
As close as we can get, yes.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. And exactly right. So mindfulness has its background, its origins in Buddhism. That's where it originally came from. But the practice that we know today is a scientific evidence-based practice that has had the spirituality removed. So you can find mindfulness being practiced by lots of different groups of people, and some of them will be spiritual. But this kind of mindfulness is secular. It doesn't have a spiritual or religious aspect to it. So the next one, it's possible to push away all the thoughts that you don't want. kind of split on this one, so you might have kind of a difference of opinion. As a psychologist, I'm going to say it's not possible to push away every thought.
It's not like a question, is it?
In order for that to be true, you would have to be able to tell me you've never had a thought that you don't like about yourself, about other people, about the world, or that makes you uncomfortable, or feel different about yourself. I don't think many people can do that, but what we do is we get very good at putting strategies in that mean that we don't think about those things. We have an attempt to kind of push them out by pushing something else in their place. But when you are really worried about something, it tends to come up no matter how much you try and distract yourself. So I'm going to say it's false. But I'm sure some of you can disprove me. We shall see. So next one. It's likely that your mind will wander while meditating, and this is not a sign that you're doing anything wrong. Fabulous. I think everyone's gone to this side. I can no longer see the so I'm going to assume that everyone's kind of on this side. Yeah, your mind will wander. My mind wanders within seconds, and that's after years and years of practice. It's just what human minds do, is they try and problem solve. They try and think their way out of absolutely everything. And then they entertain you with thoughts of random things. Like for me, it's usually musical theatre. I don't know why. That's what it does. Or old Any Fools and Horses clips. Brings them up a lot as well. And random memories I don't even know if I remembered. Yeah, so it's likely that your mind will wander, and that's okay. It's not a sign you're doing anything wrong. We want everyone to remember that, because when we do the practice, it's very easy to kind of be like, oh, I'm not focused. I've done something wrong. My mind's wandering. That's not good. So try and remember this moment. So next one. Mindfulness is about emptying your mind.
Nicholas, which side you on? You're standing around the middle.
Okay, so the answer is no. Mindfulness is not about emptying your mind. So there is this preconception. Most people have it. I had it. I think it took about 2 years of my supervisor saying, it's not about emptying your mind. And I kept saying, oh, I know that. Yeah, but I want to empty my mind. You know, it's just a thing that you go back to. But it's not, because as we said, you can't kind of push away thoughts that come up. They're going to come up anyway. So mindfulness is more about being okay with the thoughts that do come up. It's about not needing to react to them. So it's a bit like if you had a radio playing in the corner of a room, but if you're not listening to it because you're having a chat or you're doing other things, you don't even notice that radio, but it's still playing. But if you choose to be annoyed by that radio, you're going to want to kick it out the window and put a lot of energy into like destroying it or just turning it off. You're a bit more sensible than that. So the next one. The best way to meditate is to sit on the floor with your legs crossed.
Sorry?
Great. So sometimes there is this kind of preconception that you sit on the floor with your legs crossed and your hands like this and you go on. And that might happen, and that might be a way of meditating, but it is just one way of many. What we're going to find out today is how you can meditate while moving, how you can meditate while sitting, how you can meditate while eating, how you can meditate doing lots of different things. So the last one, you can practice mindfulness while brushing your teeth.
Go in the middle.
Yeah. So this was absolutely a test of where you're listening to what I just said. You can do lots of different things. And one of the easiest way to start meditating, because the idea when you haven't meditated before, the idea of kind of perhaps sitting down and spending a long amount of time when you perhaps got kids and work and running and life and different things is going to put you off. So an ideal way to start is to meditate while cleaning your teeth. What that means is you tune in to what's actually happening in the here and now. So cleaning your teeth is very essential. You've got the sound, particularly if you've got an electric toothbrush. You've got the texture of the brush. You've got the taste of the toothpaste. You've got the humidity of the bathroom. You've got different sounds going on. You've got lots of different things going on. Within seconds, your mind will probably wander. In fact, I think there was probably about a 3-month period when I first started where I would remember that I was going to do it as I put the paste on the brush. By the time it hit my mouth, I'd forgotten. So what minds do, they take you lots of different directions. And as we said before, that's okay. It's okay for it to wander off, because the practice is actually in bringing it back, in noticing that it's wandered, in coming out of that kind of autopilot and back into the present. So thanks for everyone for taking part. It would have been awful if you all just sat there. Did have thoughts in your mind. Taken by anything?
How unobservant I am of bears disappearing off screen.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
There's also an amazing video on YouTube where you have to count the passes of a basketball team. And as you're counting the passes, a man in a gorilla suit walks by and does a dance. And I genuinely didn't notice because you're so focused on counting the basketball. It's a great clip to look at. Okay, so I was just going to talk you through, so mindfulness, as I said, is a buzzword, which means it's absolutely everywhere right now. It seems to be kind of taking over the world. And a couple of years ago, I would say to clients, have you heard of mindfulness? And they generally say, no, or vaguely, but I don't know anything about it. Now, most of the time they say, yeah, I saw it on this morning, or I read it in a paper, or something like that. So I was just going to talk you through some of the different forms of mindfulness that you might find out there if it's something that you're looking to get involved with. So there are lots of different courses. The most common one are the first two. So mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, MBCT. That's one of the ones that I run through the NHS. So that is most commonly used for preventing relapse of depression and managing long-term health conditions. That's what it's got evidence for. We also use it for helping people with anxiety, but the studies aren't there to say that there's evidence for that yet, which basically means the studies haven't been done yet, but they will get funding. Mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is more around well-being, so it's more of a course for everybody really. Mindfulness-based parenting is a big thing right now. Mindful eating has kind of taken over in clinics that work with obesity or eating disorders. And the big one, the one that I'm most interested in, mindfulness for sports performance and enhancement. The downside to this so far is it's really difficult to find anything in the UK. So more and more books are coming out, more and more articles, but they tend to be written from an American perspective. And the only place that I could find to do any training in this is in America, and they haven't yet made it over to the UK. So it's coming, it's gathering momentum, it's on its way, and who knows what might happen. So next one. Yeah, so just to tell you a little bit about what's involved if you did do a mindfulness course. They're generally between 4 and 8 weeks, so the stress reduction one tends to be 4 to 6 weeks, and the others tend to be 8 weeks. Mindfulness for sports tends to be 6 weeks. The interesting thing is that all the courses, whether you do it for stress reduction, depression, sports, whatever, they all have the same building blocks. The meditations are the same. You're doing the same thing, but the language and the emphasis around it is just a little bit different. So the meditations that are included in pretty much all of them are a body scan, which is a meditation where you go through different aspects of your body, and that's really about learning to come back from autopilot. So you'll go through different aspects of your body, your mind will wander. You just practice bringing it back. Eating meditation, body and breath meditations, which is about really focusing using your breath as an anchor, which I'll go through later. And mindful activity, so doing something as a way of meditating, like brushing your teeth, or movement. Or a common one is walking, which we're going to have a look at later, because then we can move that towards mindful running. So why bother to apply this to sports? Does anyone have any thoughts on why we might want to? So I just broke my mic. Oh, that's right then. Why we might want to apply this to sports?
Because of negative talk.
Negative self-talk, yeah.
You said about being in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
being there, doing it, not thinking about
Mm-hmm.
the end or.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not quitting.
Yeah, all of these things. And are these things real to you? Are they things you actually experience? Yeah. Okay. So we're just going to do a very brief exercise just to get a little bit more in touch with what that might be for you. Because for everybody it's different. For me, at the start of my coming back to running journey, it was about not being who I used to be, comparing yourself to the fitter you, the younger you, and about potentially being slower than everyone else or not as good as everyone else. But for other people it might be a completely different thing, and it might be more about wanting to break PBs and stuff like that. So I'm going to invite you, if you feel comfortable, just to close your eyes for a moment. If you don't feel comfortable with closing your eyes, that's absolutely fine. I'd recommend that you just put them, fix them on a spot on the floor just in front of you. So I want you to imagine a scenario. So imagine a day where since the moment you got up, you just haven't felt right in yourself. Whether that's in your body or in your mind or in your emotions. It's just not a particularly good day. And you know that you have an event coming up that day, and you sort of debate not going, and then decide you will. And you get there, and you're taking part, and you're actually doing okay. And then you notice someone pass you, someone that perhaps you usually run faster than, or someone that you think you should be running faster than. Perhaps it's someone with a buggy, someone a lot older than you, a child, or someone carrying a fridge. And then you notice someone else pass you, and then someone else. And then a pacer that you would normally be a long way in front of passes you. See if you can tune in to what that feels like physically in your body, emotionally, and in your thoughts. And see if you can notice what your immediate reaction to those sensations, thoughts, emotions is. We're going to start just to come back to the room. So when you feel ready, just opening your eyes and just coming back to today, sat here, mindfulness talk, drinks, social kind of thing. But keep in mind whatever that brought up for you. And if you find that the reaction to those thoughts, those feelings and sensations isn't something that when you're kind of sat here, not in the moment, you can see probably wouldn't be that helpful for you, then that's one of the things that mindfulness can help you with. So what mindfulness does is you've got thoughts, feelings, emotions here, you've got a reaction to them here, mindfulness extends the gap here, and that gives you choice of how you respond to them. So that's basically what mindfulness is. So in terms of applying this to sports, I tend to just say it can be helpful, but the actual studies say lots of different things. So they started kind of testing this mainly in America, particularly with college rowing teams, to see how kind of a mindfulness element might help with the psychological side of rowing and competing. And obviously college teams, you know, it's a pretty big deal. It's not like going rowing once a week. It's serious stuff. And they found that it was quite helpful on a number of different fronts, which I've written down so I can never remember them all. But basically concentration and focus, making choices about your thoughts, your feelings, which ones to let go of, which ones to stay with, which is going to be helpful. Then actually letting those go, rather than just knowing that I really should let this go, but kind of hanging on to it anyway. Harmony and rhythm, which sounds a strange thing, but because it started with rowing, it was very much about being in harmony with your team, with your boat, and with the water. This is something that is adapted in different sports, and we often think about the anchors, what anchors you back to being in the present moment. So in running, it could be your breath, it could be the feeling of your feet on the floor, it could be the sound of your feet on the floor. For me, it's often birds. I don't know why. I often tune back into what can I hear around me, which tends to be birds for some reason, unless you're in an event, obviously, and people are cheering. So that's what that's about. And the last one is forming key associations. So this is about, I'm told, because I've never run a marathon, but I'm told that there are certain points where a lot of people psychologically struggle. So that 20-mile marker, or what's it called? Heartbreak corner or something in the marathon? Heartbreak something or other. You were on the tour.
That's Boston, yeah, Heartbreak Hill.
Yeah, Heartbreak Hill.
Boston Marathon. Yeah.
Okay. We did a London Marathon running tour, which was like 11 miles, so it's like the cheating version of London Marathon. You start and finish in the same place. And they kind of took us through this bit, and they said this is the bit where they loop back and they see people so many miles ahead of them coming back.
Just over Tower Bridge.
There you go. That was it.
You go right, you go right, and you see the other people coming on the other way.
And they're a lot further ahead than you.
It's not good there, no.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're on that side of the road, you see the others.
Yeah. So this is where the mind then gets involved, you know, and some people will cope with that really well, and other people won't. And it's just like being still at the bottom of Marlow Hill. Your attitude to that hill does make a difference. I feel like I have Doug to thank for that, because my attitude to hills is good now, because he dragged us up lots of them, which is good.
Glad you're involved.
Encouraged. Lots of them. So this is about learning to use those things, those associations that would usually be quite a negative thing or have quite an effect. Learning to use those as cues to come back to the present. So actually using them as deliberate places where you tune back in to your feet on the floor, or doing a body scan where you can check over your body and see what's there at that time, or checking in with something else, or as an opportunity to refuel and actually taste the gel or whatever it is, so that you're reacting in a different way to that stimulus. So all of these together can lead to what we often call flow. Can anyone have a guess at what that might be?
Is it where the level of challenge is matched perfectly with the level of demand? So you're not bored, but you're not overstimulated, so you just lose track of time.
Absolutely, yeah. Total immersion in what you're doing. Yeah, that kind of, it's very, well for me it's very rare. Don't know about other people. So
it's quite common.
Rowing. Yeah.
Because you've got the sound, but it's just
yeah. I did rowing once, and I can absolutely say that I was on the water for all of 10 minutes, and I absolutely felt that kind of immersion in the whole.
It's about 2 hours a day at university.
Yeah. Yeah. So putting all these things together can lead to increased amounts of flow, which is what they found in the studies, which of course can then lead to better results or more enjoyment. So those are the two key things that you might want to use mindfulness for: enjoying sport, performing better. And it doesn't matter which one matters to you. For me, it's not really about performing better. That's probably a lie. There is a little bit there. There is. Parkrun under 30 minutes was my target for a long time, so there is that. But alongside that, enjoying it was a big thing. Okay, so is it over to? It is over to Andy.
Hi. Well, okay. What I'm going to do now is an exercise in mindful eating, which means using eating something as an anchor to bring you into the present moment. We'll take about 7 minutes over this. So what we're going to do here is pass around these containers, and in the containers are some objects. And I'd like you each to take out 2 objects and put one of them to one side and take the other one between your thumb and your forefinger. So I'll give you a little bit of time to do all this. I think we might have failed to factor into our calculations the number of you here, because normally these sessions take place with about 8 people. So there's just a sort of logistical exercise to go on here. So I don't know what it was John Lennon said, that if you could kind of rattle your jewellery and things like that while this goes on. Whistle, sing a little bit. While this is going on, this is a bit like the sort of feeding of the 5,000, isn't it? Loads of fishes. While the distribution of objects is occurring, can I just say, if anyone has an allergy, obviously do say, don't feel socially constrained into destroying your health. If you don't actually like the objects that come around, but are not allergic to them, that's absolutely fine. That's part of the exercise. Okay, are we good to go? So, having set one of the objects aside, I want you to take the other object between your thumb and forefinger, and I want to look at it as if you had never seen one of these things before, as if you just parachuted in from outer space, just happened upon one of these things. So have a look at the texture, have a look at the shape, look at the symmetry of it. Is it symmetrical? Is it lopsided? Has the light reflecting off it? And just pause for a minute and just do that. Okay, now, having done that,
Can I just say,
Every time it goes quiet, I want to throw that clock out the window.
Yeah. Hold on to that. Hold on to that. So now I'd like you to feel the object. So how does it feel between your fingers? Is it hard? Is it soft? Is it squishy? And in particular, just bearing in mind some of the things that Gemma said earlier, what kind of thoughts are going through your mind at the moment? I mean, are you thinking, this is absolutely ridiculous, why am I sat here doing this with one of these, you know? So, having noted whatever thought of that or any other nature is going through your mind, then gently escort your attention back to the object and what it feels like. Okay, so just feel it for a moment. We'll pause again so you can do that. And now, I'd like you to smell the object. So I'd like you to very gently, slow down, slow down, slow down. And bring it towards your nose, ever so gently. Place it just beneath your nose. Breathe in very, very softly. What kind of sensations are you experiencing at all? Anything? And thinking about the smell, what's the scent of this particular object? And what does it do to you? How do you experience that? And what kind of thoughts or memories come up in your mind as those smells start to register? And what does it feel like physically as they do that? Next, I'd like you to make like you were going to eat it without actually eating it. So take the object and bring it up towards your lips, noticing how your hand moves, and bring it almost to your lips, and then stop and hold it. What's going on in your body at the moment? Are you actually starting to salivate? And again, what thoughts, what feelings? Gently take your hands away. Now, this time, and I don't want you to do it yet, I want you to actually eat it. But I don't want you to rush this, I want you to again bring it back. And as you bring it back, notice the physical process of how you actually put it into your mouth and how your fingers know where your mouth is as it moves towards your mouth, and then let it sit on your tongue for a few minutes. So can you do that now, please? That's good. That's absolutely fine. So you could tell us about that when we have this.
You just make friends, man. You don't have to eat it. If it's your friend, you don't have to eat it.
So just sort of keep it in your mouth and let it sit on your tongue, and then maybe lift it up to the palate and just sandwich it between your tongue and your palate, roll it around your mouth. And then, at a time of your own choosing, start to eat the object. And as you do it, just feel how it engages with your teeth. There's any little bits get in your teeth. And then, at some stage, start to, having done that, get ready to swallow it and notice what goes on then, and when your intention forms, and then when you actually do it. Okay, what I'm going to invite you to do now is I'm going to sit down, so if you could take the other one that you set to one side, and if you could just go through what we've just been through together, again, remembering what we've just done, but in your own time, your own pace, and I shall leave you to do that now.
Being poisoned.
Done it. Everyone's gone.
Sorry.
There's always a couple in the class.
It's nearly always me as well. Sorry, the cameraman didn't get his rating.
Box there if you want to.
I'm kind of thinking we probably all mainly eaten our raisins.
Yeah.
You finished yours, Julie.
Okay, so what I'd like to do now is just go around the room and just have a short discussion about that. So what we'll do to start with, we'll kind of maybe, to kick things off, talk in a fairly sort of loose, unstructured way. So maybe just generally, what were your experiences? What was that experience like?
A number of things really. I thought it was a bit odd at first, but sort of a bit squishy and things. And trying to smell it, I was sort of thinking it hadn't got a big flavour to it. But then I started thinking about things, and it started becoming Christmas pudding and things like this. It started becoming, you know, spotted dick and things. And then on the tasting of it, I did find I was amazed at the taste of one raisin. It was as if I put 30 in my mouth at the same time or something.
That's such a good point. Yeah,
So
such a good point. And we'll come back to that if we may. So, yeah. Anyone else?
I'll say something. When I was doing the experience, I've done something sort of slightly similar. I'm a practicing Buddhist. I had a workshop once, and we picked up, all of us picked up a lemon, and we gave them like a name and a career. Like mine was a professional footballer and part-time double glazing salesman. And we get, so it was like just to see something that, so when all the lemons were put together, it wasn't just a group of lemons, it was you could see the individuals. But, so it's something similar, but not exactly the same. But
So you're looking at them in a different way.
In a different way.
From how you would in normal life.
But even though it had a character, I did end up eating it afterwards.
So something about the colours and difference of the universe going on. Okay,
It's so something like I say, it's just to see things from a different way.
Different
than you normally
perspective,
do.
yeah. Okay, anyone else like to talk about the actual experience they had?
It heightens it. So the fact that I don't like it, it was making it worse. It was like the fact that, you know, I had to spend ages touching it, like a bit of old shriveled sort of rubber, and then I had to. It just made it all worse because it heightened it. Whereas if it had been something I liked, you can imagine it would have heightened it and made it something nicer. But I was just like, oh God, I've got to eat this.
And that's really useful because, linking back to what Gemma said, it's mindfulness applies across the board to things that you like, but also things you dislike, because you encounter both in any sport. So it's equally applicable to both. So thank you for that.
So I almost wouldn't want to highlight that, if you know what I mean. I'd rather not be focusing on it. I'd be like, oh, get it over and done with.
So your instinct was not to focus on.
No, I did focus on it. I did get into it, but that's what made it even. It made it worse for me. Yeah, it made like something I don't like even worse. So it was like focusing on something negative.
Okay. Did anyone else have a similar reaction to that?
Well, I hadn't realised how much I don't like them.
Yeah.
Actually, when mixed with other things, I quite like them. But actually, if I'm sat holding one and it's feeling greasy and it looks a bit shiny, and when you think about how wrinkled it is, I don't particularly like them. And I hadn't realised, so that was interesting.
So you've learned something.
Yeah, I have.
So you better age well, Nick.
Shiny or wrinkly.
Yeah, should have said that.
Moisturise.
So I think you said something, or one of you, I think it was you, said something about eating so many so quickly.
Just one was...
Just one was different?
Yeah. I normally get the whole box and just down in one.
It makes you think about when you actually properly sat down and appreciated it fully, properly. I know that most meals you probably just also pile up. Some you appreciate more than others. But if I kind of compare it to, I had occasions to get to the Michelin star restaurants, you take your time over over that, and you savour the mouthful, and not quite sure what on earth they've done to the food. But you don't expect it to be pretty interesting and tasty at the end of it. You're fully invested in experiencing it because you don't want to have to pay for it every single day, or hopefully somebody else is paying for it. You don't normally tend to do that for a packet of raisins.
So there's quite a lot of different thoughts coming in there.
There's also a few facetious ones around kind of like, I understand how this works with weight loss, such as if you're going to eat the raisin that slowly, I'll probably be done with dinner on Friday by Sunday.
No, I mean, facetious is all part of it, you know, it's all kind of part of your own reactions. So, okay, can we maybe now think about what actual thoughts you experienced while this was going on? Does anyone have any particular thoughts that came into their minds?
I was getting irritated by the lack of symmetry for some reason.
Right, okay.
You know, when you were really sort of investigating the shape of it, and there was just nothing that I could, I haven't noticed that about myself before, but there was just nothing that I could see a pattern or feel a pattern in.
That's actually quite special, isn't it? Because there's not that many things.
It's very, very special.
So it's quite interesting how much you can get out of one seemingly, excuse me, quite trivial or inconsequential looking exercise if you pay enough attention to it. So any other thoughts that came into
It can have a negative effect, because for me it was panic. Like, sorry, I didn't eat it at all, because A, I don't like them, and secondly, I have a real thing about food. I'm really into food. I'd like to be an astronaut, just take a tablet, because that would solve a lot of problems. But I certainly the idea of playing with it is like,
it wasn't a big meal.
And then I'm and then I'm thinking, oh, now I've got to eat it because it's part of the thing. And then I thought, and then when you were saying, I was thinking, oh God, I'm so weak. I'm just so pathetic.
I'm feeling the opposite now. I'm like, why did I cave? And you hit the ground. I'm like, no, I said it. I had two.
Was I strong then?
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting how at the start one of the things I said was everything is an invitation only. You don't have to do anything. Yet our response to something we don't like might be that we do it anyway because we feel we have to, or we don't. Like Maya Hill, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if any of you are beginning to notice things like that, perhaps, if there's any link to running.
Actually, that was the first, because obviously we were talking about running, that was the thing that, oh God, I've just been really weak again. Because I think if I'm running, I can actually feel like I'm doing quite well, and then for no apparent reason I'll stop. And that's not to do with necessarily, I don't know why I do it. And I find it really irritating, and I see it as a huge weakness.
Sports psychology is
But it
really interesting.
kind of stop me carrying on the race, if you know what I mean.
Limits on what you think you can do with no real justification or evidence behind it. You just put an artificial limit in there. You find actually in reality you can perform well beyond that. Certainly in the rowing world, if you've done the rowing ergs, quite frankly, if you're not falling off at the end, kind of having half blacked out, you haven't pulled hard enough. There's more to give. So you actually have an appreciation for how far you can push yourself. So something like Marlow Hill, yes, it's not the most enjoyable experience of the world, but I know it's well below what I have pushed myself through before.
That sounds like there's a number of similar sorts of thought going on there that maybe other people can relate to. Before we move on for thoughts, are there any other thoughts that particularly anyone wants to mention who hadn't?
I just wanted to kind of just highlight what you said there. So I think that is really important, is that sometimes it's very difficult to find a connection between eating a raisin and running. But actually what's really come up here is that in doing this and in creating something that you did like or didn't like or was neutral about, the same thoughts come up that come up when you don't like or do like or are neutral about something in running. So this is kind of like a very small version of what you experience out there. But this is safe. This is like learning to drive on quiet roads so that you can go on the motorway. When you're out there running, you're already on the motorway. Yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Top right corner, percent.
Got it, yep. Couldn't find the button.
And I mean, just to sort of add another perspective, my sport is climbing, and in that, you know, you can suddenly be in a sort of halfway up a 100-foot cliff, and you kind of start to think, I'm not really very confident in these holds, and it's a bit beyond my ability. And then the thoughts you have there, and I've literally seen this, people, you get the panic reaction, the knees literally start to shake, and I've watched it happen, and people can come off as a direct result. So it is actually beneficial, certainly in my sport, and I'm sure it applies in running too, that to have that safe space where you can actually practice some of these mental disciplines. Can I move on to the final bit, just the sort of final question I was going to ask? Yeah. So the final thing, just out of interest really, I think you've touched on it before, some of you. How is this different from your normal experience of eating something?
I think for me it's, I've had weight issues all my life, and I think I've never realised how mindless I must have eaten. Do you know what I mean? I've lost over 12 stone over the last 8 years. So now, and I've used surgery, I've used weight loss, I've used all different methods to get where I am today, but I struggle to see it. I think that's where I am at the moment. I struggle to see where I am, and I always think I'll go back. I'm very conscious of that, and I think I've never realised how mindless. I think we do eat, and I think we all do eat mindlessly. I think in front of the telly, talking to people or whatever. I think it's something I have been trying to work on, but we do eat very mindlessly, I think.
So we eat mindlessly?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the same sort of point really is how easy I can devour a packet of crisps.
Yeah.
Any flavour without thinking about it. And just tuck them away in 4 or 5 mouthfuls, 6 mouthfuls. It's just
just
in there. And I haven't really.
Big bag.
tasted it.
That's another thing.
But I haven't tasted them really. I have tasted a bit because they're all made of salt and everything else they're made of and things. But I haven't, you know, I didn't taste the same as that one.
That single little rose.
Yeah. That had a lot of flavour and it did. To me, it had a lot of flavour and.
Rediscovered raisins.
I'm going to
still
go
taste
flat
it.
out all night and try and eat 6.
Maybe you've got another trip to the
It's in
bar.
my tooth, I think.
Okay. Anybody else like to say anything? Anything at all, really?
Yeah, I'd just like to say something. If you sort of analyse things to that degree, everything you do during the day, it would just flood your mind out thinking about all the things like how you clean your teeth,
Yeah.
those sort of things, how you wash.
Yep.
Have you when you wash your hands, have you washed between your nails? Have you cleaned all the bacteria? I mean, comes a point where you can't overanalyze something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's so much that happens during the day, your mind would just fill up with stuff.
Yeah, I think it's all about choice, wouldn't you say, Gemma?
So mindfulness, like everything, is something that you pick up and you move towards you and you put further away. Sometimes it will be helpful and it will be important for you to come towards something to really be part of an experience, and sometimes it won't be. But if you are aware of what's driving that desire to move towards or go away from, then you have that space between the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions and the reaction to make that choice, and that way it's your choice rather than an instant kind of reaction. So yes, sometimes it will be helpful for you and sometimes it won't be. But that's such an interesting point. I hope when I mentioned at the end we have a couple of Facebook groups that are about discussion, I hope that you'll post that as a question, because it would be a really interesting discussion to see what people think as well.
How would you change that kind of negative mindfulness, if you like, and make that different?
Mindfulness is difficult to understand on a logical perspective. So when you try and understand this stuff, you'll probably get caught up in knots. What I would say is, if you think, certainly after this experience, that it might be something that's helpful for you, I would say go and practice for a few weeks, and I can direct you towards books or CDs or resources and things like that. And we have a Facebook group for discussion where we can support each other, and I can post meditations that you can do at home and see what comes out of it. Naturally, we all want to kind of get to the answers straight away, but when someone just kind of tells you something, you don't hear it in the way that you do when you experience it. So I hope that makes sense, and it isn't kind of a putting off the question. It is a genuine kind of thing of, it's something that you discover for yourself, and everyone will discover it in a different way and will have a slightly different answer to that question. So I hope that makes sense. My one of the things that I posted on the Facebook group, which I'll give you links to later, was a video about the attitudes towards mindfulness and the things that we're cultivating as we go along, and one of those is kind of patience, and having this kind of experience of kind of needing to experience something rather than to know it is a natural reaction. And we all want to do it, don't we? If we ask, I don't know, 16-year-olds what they want to do with their lives, they tend to want to do whatever is quickest, whatever earns the most money, that kind of thing, rather than, actually, what's really going to make me happy? And it's only kind of later in life that you maybe kind of pick up on those things. Okay, shall we move on? Is that okay? You ready? Yeah? Okay. So we're going to move with you everywhere you go. So whether you're in a supermarket or you're running or whatever you're doing, your breath is there with you, so it's something that's easy to tune into. Not everybody likes using the breath, and sometimes people who have experienced things like panic attacks might choose to use something else. So the other thing that you can use is the soles of your feet on the floor. So you can choose, this is entirely up to you, which you want to use. So I'm going to invite you to have a go at a very short meditation, and just like we did with this, we'll just have a discussion of your experience of it. So I'm going to invite everyone just to get into a comfortable position. So mindfulness is really about becoming alert and aware of what's happening right now, rather than to fall asleep. So you might find it relaxing, you might not. If you find it relaxing, that wasn't the aim, that's kind of a side effect, which is great, but you might not. So instead of being in a kind of a relaxed, hunt kind of position, the ideal is to be in a position we kind of call the mountain pose. It's about being in an alert position, an awake position. So ideally with your feet flat on the floor, so that you can use the floor to anchor yourself to if you want to. And ideally with your back self-supporting. But as I said, it's an invitation only. Think about your own body, think about what you need. Always keep that question in mind of what do I need? And if you need to jump on the chair, then that's what you do. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. And again, if you don't feel comfortable, that's fine. Maybe just fix them. Those kind of things. Yes, thank you for sharing that. Does anyone have a similar or different experience?
I was amazed at how I didn't hear the clock at all until you said, listen to what was around.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, the clock's still ticking.
Mm-hmm.
So
Suddenly
I
noticed
felt like very almost at one within myself.
Okay.
And I've never done.
Okay. And was there, you may or may not know to this, but when you noticed the clock and you felt that kind of amazement, did you notice it anywhere particularly in your body? Okay.
I don't know, I was just suddenly aware at how loud the clock was.
Okay.
Given that I hadn't really acknowledged it, but I had earlier, because when you mentioned the clock before, I kind of thought, yeah, you're right, it's really quite loud.
Okay.
But during that time, I hadn't been aware of it at all.
Yeah.
And then as you said it,
suddenly came
so
in.
It was almost like it wasn't there at all before.
Was there any kind of emotional reaction? Was that like a positive thing or a negative thing or kind of a neutral thing? Or?
I didn't feel it was negative. I just felt that was
just awareness.
Like brought me out into a different part of awareness, I guess.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Any other experiences?
Is it wrong to think you're asleep?
What do you mean?
I thought I went to sleep, but I forget.
Yeah, okay. It happens a lot. I teach courses with people snoring in the corner. It happens a lot. As I was saying earlier, relaxation is not the aim of mindfulness. It's to be with what's here, and that might be good and that might be negative. It might be relaxing, it might be stressful. But a lot of people do find that kind of find that it's relaxing, then fall asleep. Natural part of the experience.
I found it amusing that I just sort of, my mind had obviously drifted, and I just managed to put a label onto it, like the clock, or I'm feeling a bit achy, and then you said, oh, it may be that you're hearing the clock, and I just thought, oh yeah, I just noticed that, or you may be feeling a bit uncomfortable, you have a choice, and I'd just been, that started to niggle me. So. Yeah.
So lots of different and similar things all going on in that very short period of time. There's a lot of thoughts, a lot of feelings, a lot of reactions.
Sort of, because my shoulder, I've got a trapped nerve, and it sort of took my mind off the pain that was there. Okay. Sort of like a pain relief sort of site as well.
Okay. Isn't that interesting? Because we think of pain as something that's either there or it's not. But there is most definitely both a physical and emotional or psychological experience of pain. But it sounds like you experienced some sort of movement in your pain, or noticing it and not noticing it. Yeah.
Speaking as somebody that's coming back from injury, all the physios are telling me, yeah, I can move absolutely fine. It's just the rest of the body that is instinctively wanting to protect against something that doesn't have to. So to retrain myself to, actually I can do this.
Okay, yeah. So that connection between the mind and body that sometimes works in our favour and sometimes likes to work against us and sometimes is kind of neutral. Yeah. With pain is an interesting one. So we do run courses in the NHS for people with long-term conditions, and a lot of them are experiencing chronic pain. I live with pain, with neuropain myself, and it is an interesting one because we do tend to think of it as something that's just there and is kind of fixed, but actually when you explore your pain, when you take the time to really notice pain in a mindful way, it often comes and it goes, and it has tingles and it has different bits that are sharper and more dull, and you experience it in a different way. And over time, people experience a change in their relationship with their pain. So what we don't do is take people's pain away, and we never offer them that. Although they come with that idea, we're very clear to say, we're not going to take your pain away, but what we might be able to do is work with your relationship with it, given that you're living with it. Okay, so that was really all about an experience of finding an anchor, which I'm hoping is the next bit. Yes, see, I know what I'm doing. So the next bit is just that, actually. It's about using an anchor, but it's about using it through movement. So what we've done today is we've done meditations through eating, we've done meditations through breath, we've talked about mindful action, and now we're going to move on to mindfully moving. So, invitation, not a command. Everyone who wants to take part, stand up. So, be aware of because we're going to move, be aware of your drinks and things of the room. There's plenty of space over here if people want to come over here. So we're going to start with mindful walking. So as we know, mindfulness is just about bringing attention to what's here in the present, right now, non-judgmentally, or noticing those judgments as they come up. And we're just going to practice that while moving. So normally I would do this with a very small group in a big space. Today we have a large group in a small space. So obviously be aware of who's around you and walking into people or kicking them or tripping them up or anything like that. But we're going to start just by actually tuning in to the feeling of your feet on the floor. So as you said, mindfulness is about becoming awake, so you're on kind of a mountain pose, something that is strong and awake. And just see if you can become aware of what your feet feel like on the floor or in your shoes right now. If you want to move them slightly, perhaps rocking, shifting weight from one side to the other, and just really become aware of what that's like. So we're going to start just by taking a step. So remember, this is like coming to things for the first time. So it's a bit like taking your very first step, which I'm sure none of you really remember. But you're going to just start by shifting weight to one foot and feeling the other foot kind of lighten as you start to pick it up. And you might notice part of your foot come off the floor. And you might notice the shift in weight, not just in your feet, but in your calves, in your thighs, in your core. You might notice your arms move to keep you balanced. You might notice your shoulders, your neck and your head. As you start to take your first step, just become aware of what that's like for you in your body. Or any thoughts that come up as you do this? Judging, evaluating, memories. We're going to slowly just take a few steps. So become aware of where you are in the room, your space in the room, and if you're likely to crash into anyone. If you need to turn, just becoming aware of the whole of the body turning. So perhaps noticing how your hips play a role, how your core plays a role, the arms. And you might want to play around a little with the speed. You might want to slow it down. You might want to speed it up. You might want to take exaggeratedly high steps. Might want to do the other lunge.
Steady on.
Whatever you do with the water, just becoming very aware of what that's like. But also any emotional reaction, any thoughts or feelings that come up for you as you do this. And when you're ready, making it part of the practice, just taking yourself back towards your chair. Even making the sitting down kind of part of your practice, just becoming aware. Hold on to what you're feeling and experiencing, because sometimes people feel they have to take this seriously. I laughed all the way through for so long. Just notice what it brings up, if that's what it brings up for you, and there's no right or wrong to whether it makes you angry or laugh or feel crazy. We did this at a retreat, and there was 50 of us walking through a very small village like this. And there were all kinds of comments from the locals who were very confused. Yeah, mindfulness people are seen as a little bit crazy sometimes, but aren't we all? So I'm curious to your reaction, but I'm going to challenge you a little bit with your reaction to do what we call popcorn inquiry when we do this, which is a small bite of inquiry. So what I'm going to challenge you to do is when you say something about your experience, keep it to 3 words or less. So kind of summing up. Any thoughts or experiences? Or?
Rehab session 10 weeks ago.
How many words is that?
Well, cutting it down to 3 was going to prove problematic.
Yeah. So did it take you back?
Yeah, because literally 10 weeks ago I was in a session with a rehab, figuring out how to walk again properly, as opposed to what I was doing.
Yes.
Wasn't properly.
So that kind of instant kind of flashback to an earlier time.
Yeah, so I've learned to walk more recently than this one.
Yeah. Oh, was it? Because that's one of the things that's really important about this is it's in the present. What was the experience of walking like this time doing this?
One, a hell of a lot easier. Sounds silly, but frankly I've made a lot of improvements since then, and certainly the feelings of certain muscle groups that are behaving themselves more now than were previously.
Okay, yeah. So was there a positive feeling to it?
Definitively, because last time walking properly was a real struggle.
Yeah, the mind does this, doesn't it? It compares, it contrasts, it takes you out of this moment into the other moments that you've been to kind of compare it to, and that's kind of a natural wandering of the mind that it does. We've lost the whole popcorn inquiry theme.
Sorry.
Okay, rhythm of movement.
Brilliant.
Much more pressure.
Okay.
Thinking about balance.
Yeah. It's not
One
just
small
me.
step.
One small step. Yeah.
Lack of flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, disjointed.
Complicated.
Different, fun, pleasant.
Okay. Brilliant. So huge amount of variety. All within the same experience, yet we all experience it quite differently. Yeah. Okay. So the last slide I have just mentions about so I don't know what I'm doing with mindful sport in terms of where it's going. I know what I'm doing in this, but in terms of where it's going. But I'm really keen to have discussion and to understand more about this. So there is a Facebook group that myself and Andy run, which is specifically for runners who want to include mindfulness, either because they want to combine the two or because they want mindfulness to help them run better, or whatever it is. If you kind of want to put the two together and you're on Facebook, that is a great group to join. Mindful Runners, a community for runners who recognise their mind's presence, and we can have more discussions. That would be good. We've also started another group which is particularly for climbers. I don't know if anyone else climbs, but if you want to get involved with that, you can. A similar sort of thing is happening, discussion. And the last one, Gemma Mindful Running, is just my page, which is very quiet because I was just posting the same things in the page in the group, so I sort of haven't done much now. I will get a website up and running at some point. But if you want to join the discussion, that's a great way of doing it. Or just talk to me, because I could talk about mindfulness all day long quite happily. Because as I said before, running, mindfulness were the two things that helped me through some really difficult times, physically and emotionally. So I know that it can help people, whether that's to help you just run faster or help you deal with those kind of things that stop you getting there in the first place. Like, I don't want to get out of bed, it's dark, it's cold, 8:15 and I need to leave the park run at 8:30 and I'm still in bed, all those kind of thoughts. Yeah, so as I said, I don't know where this is going, but I'm probably going to put on another one of these that goes beyond Handy Cross, so that people on your pace of mind and stuff can get involved if they want to. So I would really, really appreciate your feedback. So I have got some feedback forms, whether it's positive, negative or neutral. I really genuinely want your feedback, because I will make changes based on that. So I have some feedback forms at the back for everyone who's willing to fill out and just put back in the envelope that's next to them. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gemma and Andy, I hate it when people always ruin the end of an evening by making a big speech I'm not going to, but I just want to say thank you ever so much. I think what you've really done there is whet our appetite to know even more about it. And so thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate it. Ruth's she's going to read the urn. just to, we just got a couple of bottles, so I was really disappointed when he said I don't drink, so you better stop. Oh, but he said, so that's all right then. But just a little something to say thank you ever so much for indulging us this evening. So thank you.
Thank you.
Or you can always keep it as a trophy.